Hi everyone, it's Lenica here with the Enchanted Acres Homestead. I wanted to give everybody an update on our pastures this year. We have been working on our perimeter fence. This is the new fence we're putting up. It's going very slowly because me and my husband both work off the farm. And so this is pretty much just done on our free time. And so yeah, it's going up. Because the perimeter fence has been down large portions of it, the horses have been stuck behind in one electric poultry net. And we've been moving them across the pastures all summer, and I'm actually loving it. So it is a bit more work because we do have to usually move them about every 3 days or so. But let's take a look at what the pastures look like, because they've been grazing. So as you can see, they're in a spot right now. There are still some weeds left. There's a little bit of grass in there, some weeds too. So these guys will be moved tomorrow, and by the time they are, it will look more like this spot, which is what they were moved off of 2 days ago. So they come in and it starts looking like that, and believe it or not, these weeds were about as tall as Elsa's back there. She was a big old 17-18 hand draft horse, so you know, they're pretty big, pretty wild, and this was so thick I could hardly walk through it, and this is just a couple of days. So this is considered a high intensity grazing because it's a very small area with 2 horses. High intensity just means a small area with compared to the number of animals on it. So we got them, this is one single poultry net. It's about, you can see the corner right there. And this is the size it is when it stands by itself. We have been able to connect it to the fence in the past, so it went from all the way there to all the way up there. They were on that spot for about 7 days. So, you know, I'd say on average every 3 days. But look at this. Look at this regrowth. This spot was grazed, I'd say, about 2.5 weeks ago. And look at that beautiful grass. And you know what else is missing? Not completely. I mean, they're still in here. But there are far fewer weeds. If you look at that pasture up there, it's almost 70% weeds. I mean, it is a lot of weeds. I even weed whacked some of it, but what are you gonna do? Can't do the whole thing, really. And over here is where I started this, and you can see that the grass here is also very thick, very tall, very nice. These brown areas that you see up there, those are actually areas where I did not have them on. On this pasture, I really was doing odd shapes, round shapes, because I was really trying to get them to eat stuff they have not previously eaten in the past, and then I wanted them to be on stuff that they had overgrazed in the past to try and fertilize it. Like here you can see this is super thick, and that's not quite so much. Still pretty good, but you know, this is where they historically have not pooped and peed, so it's had no fertilizer, and they've also just eaten it down to the dirt year after year and not allowed it to grow. So there is some variation, but overall it's really, really good, and the weeds are far, far less. We have not had to put the horses back onto a spot they have already grazed this year either. So all of this super lush green stuff you see, there's hardly any weeds in any of it. And some of this stuff was grazed more than 2 months ago, and almost no weeds. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that the weeds were killed off mostly before they could seed. But also, once the weeds were killed off, it really gave the grass a chance to grow and outcompete with the weeds. Yes, there are still a few, like right there, but far, far fewer than like that pasture up there, or these areas that haven't been grazed. Now, all this brown stuff, it is mostly grass. It's grass that grew very, very tall, like almost 6 feet tall, and has since died back because it's hot and they've already gone to seed and everything. But as you can see, this is the pasture they've been in. They were actually here, then there, and then we had them 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we actually put them up between our fence lines up there, between the old and the new fence line, and down over there to help clear all of that up, because that was really overgrown with weeds and also like marsh grass, because we've had some flooding issues over there. But we're going to be putting up a fence, so we needed all that cleared out. Let the horses do the work for us. So they were over there for about a week or so, and then we brought them back over here. They went there, there, and now they're there. They'll probably go back there and then start working their way over there. Now this does have the downside of, like, you know, we have to move their water. That means we have to drag a hose all the way across the pasture, because we don't personally have any tanks that we can, you know, fill up with water and bring out here and dump it into their troughs. But it works for us for now. You know, future projects. But the really neat thing about this is horses always have zones of refusal, which is, you know, like this super green spot. This was a zone of refusal, and that's because that's where they pee and poop. Problem is like, they might not be on this for a year, and they still will come back and not pee and, or only pee and poop on there, and try not to eat it. So you get too much overgrazing and compaction in these areas, and then they don't want to regrow at all. And you can see that here. And also no fertilization, where this doesn't want to grow quite as great as this wants to grow. So by doing this, I get even grazing across the whole pasture. Look at that, a whole spot. Yes, they still have their zones. So that was the last 8 spot where they were pooping. And you know, that's pretty much where all their poop congregates. We don't have a pasture drag at the moment, but if you had one, that'd be a quick fix. Just come out here with like a 4-wheeler and a pasture drag and spread it all out. But by this time last year, because of their zones of refusal, you know, they might have gotten it down to about this, but they still didn't want to eat it. They had my whole property kind of looking like this, where it was very, very short, and actually it looked a lot worse than this because it was mostly dirt. It actually looked more like this. And we had almost no grazing left for the horses. And that was across this pasture, and that pasture. Now we're halfway through August, a little bit more than halfway through August, and we haven't put them on the same strip of ground once. And we still have a lot of untouched ground, like back there in that corner, up there, that whole corner over there, and then all of this back here. And they haven't been on this pasture at all since last winter. And as you can see, there's still plenty of grass, and on top of that, we have grass regrowing. So actually, because of the high intensity grazing and the rest time, even though it gets down to almost dirt, and sometimes it does get down to bare dirt, like over here, because of the high intensity grazing and they're on such a small area, the pastures get a lot of rest time. Like I said, some of this they grazed 2 months ago and still haven't touched, and probably still will not touch until the winter time. So our pastures are actually going a lot further, and we're going to actually have a lot of graze banked up for the winter. We've essentially stockpiled grazing, and we won't have to feed as much hay this winter either. Now, once we get all of our fencing up, like we have our fencing down back here, we do own all of that, but that's super steep hillside and we don't want to be using it. So we're have our fence going down along there. It'll come back out and it'll go down along this whole back. And I think what we'll probably do is we will still have a fence line to go across here. That's the old corner back there. That's the new corner. So we'll put a fence line all the way down, which will help kind of keep this area square. probably will take this one down, and then we'll do strip grazing. And we'll do that over the winter, which I have buckets, which I'll explain in another video. So moving the fence line in the winter won't be terribly difficult. And I think we'll probably just continue to strip graze these guys for forever, as long as it works for us, because we've really had a lot of good things happen since we started this high intensity grazing, and strip grazing will give us the same result. Just be a little bit easier than having to move this whole get up. And this will really help us, I think, repair the pastures, because we've only been here for 3 years, and the pastures used to all look like that spot of grass, and now they look like this. And this is after only 3 years of grazing, and only these 2 horses. So, you know, these 2 horses have done quite a bit of damage to the pasture because of the open pasture grazing system. And now with the high intensity grazing, the pastures have actually begun to recover in only a summer's time. So we'll probably stick with this. So I just wanted to give everybody an update on what was going on, how our pastures are coming along, what it looks like after 1 summer's worth of high intensity grazing, and just, you know, my thoughts on what my pastures look like this year versus the past 2 years, and, you know, plans going forward. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and don't forget to like and subscribe.